Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Wednesday, August 14th, which means we have a new tavern brawl to do. We also have some daily quests here. Let's see. Let's get rid of the overload because that's only 50 gold. Taunt minions, mage and shaman, and rogue and warrior. So we want to get at least these two done. Taunt minions will probably play itself. There's so many decks I have right now that are mech decks that have taunt abilities in them that it almost certainly would happen. So it's just mage, shaman, rogue, and warrior. Let's see what the tavern brawl is. I bet it's pretty simple since last week was a Brawlseum. You collide with another hero and your decks are mixed up. Pick another starting hero at the start of your game. Your deck will be a random combination of those two classes. So we'll just stick with mage. I think that will work pretty well. And then whatever we get, if we can pick between a rogue or warrior, that would be nice. So let's start with mage. We'll be given 3 options, so you have basically 1/3 of a chance, or 2 out of 7 choices, I suppose, since it's not actually 9.
Jaina versus Gul'dan.
Your soul shall
So
be mine.
not a terrible setup. I am at this point thinking I'm gonna have to finally start recording more footage. Not that I'm really under a huge time crunch or anything. And I feel like, in particular, since I was going to play Torchlight, that's going to be kind of a weird, quiet game for me. I don't think I'll be much in the mood to talk a lot over that. That being said, I guess it is kind of nice that I could play Torchlight and spend some extra time on that, because it is a Diablo warrior or rogue. So which do I want to pick? Rogue cards or warrior cards? I'll take rogue cards. Let's see.
Prove your worth,
because because I'm probably not ever playing any more 2K games, including things like Borderlands the pre-sequel, which is what I was next gonna play as far as Borderlands game, and I'm almost certainly not playing Borderlands 3. That's like, I've got some extra time now in the long scope of things, the extremely long scope of things, in which I'm planning out like the rest of my life.
This power is ecstasy.
So Torchlight kind of makes sense that way, but not a ton. All I did yesterday was waiting for the plumber. It seems like the plumber is finally on their 4th trip now, including the first estimate, which clearly was a waste of their time and mine. Seems like the plumber's finally done, but there's an inspection Thursday, so tomorrow. So again, each time this happens, I'm having to wake up rather early, and right now my sleep schedule is kind of the exact opposite of that. So that certainly doesn't help much to be in that situation. So yeah, there's an inspection tomorrow. Fingers crossed everything will go and be done, and then for at least a brief amount of time, my Tuesdays and Thursdays and weekends will be back to being free enough that I can wake up at an appropriate time to be in the mental mood and actually think about doing some work of some other kind. Waking up early just and this is probably just a testament to very poor health. It causes my entire day to just be out of whack. And like, I normally am just wandering around like a zombie for the rest of the day, and maybe I'll fall asleep, and that falling asleep will take up extra hours to try to catch up on sleep, which you can never really do. Late in the evening, after going back to sleep yesterday and waking up again, I spent most of the night working on my server. Making decent progress. It's just really a matter of getting a lot of websites, pre-built websites, running on Apache to do what I actually want them to do. Which is often a struggle to just get them to install right. I had an amazingly hard time trying to figure out how to get the M in a lamp set up, the lamp standing for Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. Well, the MySQL part of that, or more accurately, the Maria database, which is the open source replacement, that part of the setup has caused me such frustration, and I really don't know what was going wrong. I was trying to create a user so you didn't log in as the root user that had the permissions to create other users, because that's what the setup of the website Apache wants, and I could never get it to work. Eventually I just, through a lot of Googling and a lot of trying different solutions, set it up to let me log in as root, and then the root part fixed it eventually, through a lot of setup. So I did get Apache installed, so now I have Nextcloud installed, Apache installed, and I partially incorrectly have let's see. Well, that would do 2 damage. That's probably the best I can do. Oh man, there was probably a point I could have succeeded better. Yeah.
Job's done.
So I'm trying to get MineOS to work. That's partially installed. I'm trying to get the Calibre book server software to work. I don't think that ever worked previously. I think I had to use a pre-made website that built its own website on top of that, because it just didn't work. Some of this stuff might also just integrate into Nextcloud and not even need to exist anymore, which would be good, because all of these software in totality are not well, they're not well designed software that's been maintained well. None of them are using like a WebSockets interface, which would, with a nice HTML5 website. Maybe Nextcloud is the most supported website software that has something like that, but a lot of the other ones, these are open source projects with very few contributors, and it's kind of just a miracle that they work at all. Sometimes they work perfectly fine, or they did work when they were released and then they were kind of abandoned. Back when I cared about comic books, there was this software made by like a Russian programmer, I believe, called Comic Rack, which is an amazingly good software, and it had an amazing amount of plugins. And eventually not too soon. Not too soon after he released the Android app of Comic Rack, which is still probably one of the best comic book ebook readers for Android. A lot of people were putting cracked versions of the software out there, but Comic Rack was programmed in Microsoft.NET language, which does not easily port itself over to Linux. So if you were going to try and run a server with a bunch of comic books that were in a nice organized library, and by bunch I mean like thousands upon thousands of comic books, you would have to run it on Windows, and then that's kind of ridiculous. Best case scenario, you have a virtualization of Windows running on your Linux server to do that. Unfortunately, yeah, that was really abandoned, and it's really an indication of just how, because the fandom of comic books is so niche and so small and never really grew out of that nicheness, there was no real big embrace in digital versions of the comic books. People like to
That was a mistake.
Alright, let's see. Choose a friendly minion, gain a copy of its death row. Oh, I guess that wouldn't have done anything anyways. There was a danger there that I was going to use Shadow Step on this early and not win. Now, there is definitely some silliness that Calibre, which is an ebook server software, doesn't really handle comic books very well, and Comic Rack does it way better. On the other hand, there is also kind of a layer of separation. And certainly I do know Comixology exists, and that is where I guess we'll just try a lot of... Well, see, if I play Murloc Shaman, I'm not going to win. I've noticed that we've had not good success rate with that. So let's try Rogue or Warrior, and then I'm going to go back to Mage in ranked play. Let's see. Tempo Rogue play. Yeah, and so if you are willing to read comic books, Comixology or something like that is probably the better way to do it. But if you're reading an ebook, you probably want something like a Kindle, whereas if you're wearing a comic book, you want something like a tablet or an iPad. So you get this different experience regardless. The two things are very, very separate. And inherently, unless you are really, really deep into skimming for quality, the number of Western comic books worth reading are not very high at all. Like, I saw on Reddit someone put up a poster, picture, and it's like, I've collected all of the Amazing Spider-Man comics, or from at least like one of the author's runs, I believe is probably more accurate. So it looked like it was about 100 Spider-Man comics, and it would have been probably closer to 600 if it was all of the Spider-Man comics, and that would have been really, really expensive. But my foray into trying to read comic books proved to me pretty quickly that most of them are disposable garbage. It's a shame. Now, if you move over to manga, yeah, you get slightly better manga, but then you're running into the factor that manga is made on the cheap, and thus it's black and white, so you have to get over that hump. And then you also are getting over the fact that let's see. you also have to get over the fact that it's a lot more dialogue than you probably would expect, and a lot less action. Arguably, maybe that's where Western comic books should learn from, is the idea that they should get away from animating action scenes so much and instead focus on let's see, is there anything we can do?
Justice is mine. I'll take that.
I guess.
All of you.
So yeah, at a certain point it might not really matter to have the Calibre software. Arguably it doesn't matter to have a MineOS Minecraft management server website to manage your Minecraft server. But it's nice to have, because if you've got a server that's very far away from you and it's running your Minecraft server, being able to log into that from like a cell phone and say, oh, the server's stuck, or here I need to add a person's ID so that they can be allowed to play instead of having the server totally open to random people, which would be a little dangerous to do that. And yeah, I'm mostly close to being finished with having it set up all the way I want it to be set up. There's hope this works, and this is a smart move.
This guy's toast.
Nope, the coin was a waste.
Lapdogs, all of you.
Yep.
Justice is mine.
I'm playing cards that I don't need to even play cards. I'm copying a small amount of backup data, and it has been copying for like 3 days. It should be done now. It said 8 hours about 8 hours ago, so and I guess the question would come down to if how accurate are the time estimates on a Linux file transfer compared to a Windows file transfer. It's taking forever to move 400 gigabytes, which is not a small amount of data by any means, but it's going through probably a USB 2.0 connection. My server's hardware is like 7 years old at this point. I don't think there were any USB 3.0 ports even available when I got that motherboard. And it was not the ideal way to move data around, and now that I've figured out the ideal way, I could have just plugged the hard drive in directly and it would have taken probably 8 hours in total at most. But whatever. I'm being efficient and multitasking, and that's not a bad thing.
Blood and plunder.
Let's hit this and
Justice
hit
is
this.
mine.
So maybe by Saturday, yeah, maybe by Saturday, instead of ranting about a bunch of Linux and computer stuff, I'll actually be back to talking about, hey, I actually played some video games, since this is a video game YouTube channel. It did occur to me, this would be an interesting experiment to see, is how many people would you need to, how many, not just people, but IT nerds would you need on a Skype call to have a podcast if all of them were just actually working at that time on servers, on computer things? It would have to be people that that either either take very few calls and dealing with people in general, which is the ideal job for any IT person, but is also the unrealistic scenario. More often than ever, you typically do have
Blood and
support calls you're getting, or you're having to do something else. That.
Justice is mine.
But yeah, I think whereas a good podcast has at least 3 or 4 people on it, I would say like the Jimquisition, which I mostly completely stopped listening to at this point, thank goodness. That they have 3 people, and Jim Sterling talks for the vast majority of that time. Whereas the Giant Bombcast has like 4 or 5 people around the table, and that mostly just devolves into each person talking about what they are doing that week, and having very little let's do this. Very few
Justice is mine.
interactions or conversations. Interesting. Let's see. Wow, there was a glitch there. I pulled this forward to attack,
Quickly.
and the effect here sent it back to the hand, and it summoned it back to the hand. Interesting. There, I imagine it used my mana to do that also. Somebody did comment on my channel. It looked like a spam comment, but I'm not gonna bother to ban it, asking me to do Lego Batman like 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, 6 times, 10 times, stud multiplier and red bricks, and I'm like, I already did that. So either you don't know my channel, or you're asking for something that already exists.
That's not a valid target.
So that was awkward and weird, but whatever. I'll leave it be as far as a comment, and just not harder to thumbs up it. I pretty much heart and thumbs up any comment anybody puts down, but that'll be an exception. And I suppose eventually, if I did have a big enough YouTube channel. Alright, so that was Rogue. Let's see how the Warrior plays out. Yeah, I'll have to become more picky. Alright, I think at this point there's no more hanging around it. I did want to point out I am testing out Twitter's. They popped up an ability to have a black screen here. So, well, it's not black, it's blue. I like it. It's not that bright white that, frankly, a lot of websites used to do, and bright white was fine, but it doesn't work very well when I'm looking at Steam all the time. Ideally, I'd like to see Steam become bright white, and then go back to bright white on Twitter. The problem mostly, though, falls into the fact that when I'm zoomed in like this on Twitter, this scroll bar exists, and it really shouldn't. There's a better way to have an internal, like, better looking scroll bar. I don't really mind that the scroll bar is gray on the side here, but it's not ideal for the sidebar. I'd like the sidebar to collapse itself quite a bit and not take up so much space, so that when I am zoomed in like I am, I will be able to I would be able to see an entire screen of just tweets that I could mouse wheel down. We don't have a ton of news, but we do have enough to justify going through all of this. And inherently, like every stream, the ideal is to get through all of this pretty quickly. Since I got through the Tavern Brawl pretty easy, there's kind of no good reason to not
This place is
not try and just finish early and get back to working on the server. Like, the main thing is once I'm done moving the files over, I can reboot the server and try to get some of the other services to work. Apache, for instance, when it installed, offered to set itself up for things like Plex and Universal Plug and Play, which is the new name of DLNA, or vice versa. I'm not even sure. So Apache might be the better service for me to use, but then it would just be streaming music and not video and photos. So I don't know why I'd particularly split that apart. Inherently, I would like all the services to work on one big service, but we gotta figure out how that would work. So this deck is the deck where you have to have that one minion that will double the number of bombs that go into the hand. But even when you do that, it's kind of unrealistic. Like, I think a deck like this could be improved if you could double the battle cries also. TechRaptor has a advertisement article here. Sacred Sword Sweeties is now available on Nutaku. Remember, Nutaku is the adult video game website that makes cheap. They're not cheap in quality, but they're kind of cheap in concept sex games. It's owned by the parent company that owns Pornhub. But yeah, they do seem to put out a new game of medium quality every couple of months, which is to say they do more than I'd think pretty much any of the other adult game developer, visual novel developers out there, because there's certainly a lot of people that release maybe one game every 3 or 4 months, whereas Nutaku is clearly hiring somebody or has an internal team that's developing something every month or two, which is what they need to do. They need to have a lot of properties that they owned as a publisher. Steam, in a comparison, if Steam had 5 more AAA successes under the Valve lineup, they would be in a much better position. Let's see. We have an article here from the ESA. The ESA being the people who ran, who leaked out all that information on the people that went to E3. Apparently there's more to that story, that yet another database was also in the same way insecurely saved, so it was pretty much standard operating position, standard operating procedure to have it work the way it was being done. But this article I don't think is related to this. They have the SAAM Arcade 2019 Breaking Barriers. What does that stand for? The Smithsonian American Art Museum. So they had a event where they showed off video games. Which, okay, there's a keynote here. It's like an hour long. Just a PowerPoint presentation and conversation. Let's see. So let's skim this article for a second and see what they're talking about. I noticed something immediately myself. So we have the article here. This year's theme, Breaking Barriers, attended were able to play 13 different games from the Indie Developer Showcase. Is that the GDC Indie Developer Showcase? Discussing their games as developers discussed with the developers themselves. In this year's theme up, games were intentionally selected to build empathy through gameplay. The indie games selected featured traditionally underrepresented communities, including the LGBTQ+ people, women, people of color, people with mental health issues, and other disabilities, and more. At this point, I am not sure you can say any of these groups are underrepresented in video games at all. I think you could easily make the argument they are overrepresented representative in video games based on a comparison to well, take your pick here, based on the statistics of their target audience, based on the statistics of the countries that the games are developed or set in, based on the statistics of, frankly, just about anything. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to swear that's the case, but it's starting to feel like that's the case. A great example of that is the Call of Duty issue, where the number of one-armed cyborg women fighting in not cyborg, but amputee women with a prosthetic in World War II that were fighting on like the front lines or in conflict zones was almost certainly approaching zero, if not zero, and yet on the cover of Call of Duty, that's their focus, that's on the trailer. It's just not realistic. And so, yeah. And even a game that I really don't have too much to... I don't have anything bad to say about at all, actually. Because I haven't played it. Dream Daddy Dad's Dating Simulator. Like, every single male dad character in there, it is just gay by default, and it's not even questioned, so that's overrepresentative of any reality anywhere. Let's see if there's anything else worth mentioning here. No, there's a couple of games being mentioned here. There's a game called Bearded Dragons I haven't heard of. Bearded drag queens fight over cash chips. Another game, Calapus. I gotta show this just to make sure I'm not, just to show you I'm not making this up. Bearded dragons, bearded drag queens fight over cash tips. Drag queens are you know, cross-dressers, transvestites. Not really the T as in transgendered and LGBTQ. Not really people. I don't think any of the LGBTQ plus people are fans of drag queens in general speak. I mean, everybody's got their own opinion. Another game called Calapus offers 40 accessibility options for disabled players. These include colorblind, dyslexia-friendly fonts, and more. Pre-shave by this person allows players to experience racial anxieties as a brown man trying to avoid racial profiling at the airport by shaving. Like, these are not games that really should be at an event, in my opinion, at the Smithsonian. This is really not where... It's not the best of the best thing to be showing. It just really isn't. Like, I'm gonna lose here. Maybe there are different wings of the Smithsonian. I haven't been to it, so I don't know. Maybe there are different wings, and maybe they. But it's the Smithsonian. There's no way that there should be enough room and enough demand that you're scraping. Let's face it. Let's call it what it is. The bottom of the barrel of games that nobody has heard of, just to fit this crazy SJW theme. If you're gonna do a video game presentation at the Smithsonian, you invite the National Video Game Museum to do their presentation that they did at that they do at E3 and other places, where they bring out a Pong game, something that's way more impactful to the video game industry, something that's nostalgic, something that has whole books written, there are whole books on the Atari and development of Pong and how groundbreaking that was.
Hello.
I'll treat him nicely, even though I'm mute him. You bring out Super Mario 64. That was a groundbreaking game. You Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, and that's just Nintendo Mario series. You bring out E.T. and you show one of those cartridges. You bring out like even Pitfall. There's so many historically relevant and impactful to the society video games out there, and sure, it's kind of a struggle as you get more and more modern. It wouldn't have upset me if they had put a game like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which is a story of a woman dealing with mental issues throughout the entire game, but done very well and very impactful. That's a story that deserves to be in a museum and shown off in an event. Or even the new God of War series. That's impactful, certainly. I think some Tomb Raider game deserves to be mentioned, because there's definitely been a impact there also. You bring out Halo. Halo was super important. You bring out different bits of hardware. There's presentations and games that can be shown about and talked about that matter, and this really is just not a case of that. It's art to send a message, and if you're trying to use art to send a message, here I'm going to be a real art critic for a second and sound like a total snob. which is exactly how an art critic should sound.
Return to nothing.
If you're making art to send a message, and you're not making art that is open to interpretation, you're not making art. You just aren't. Hear me out. What you're making when you're trying to send a message, have people think a certain way, feel a certain way, tell a narrative, you're not making something that's art. Art is supposed to be 100% useless. So, in that concept, in that belief, it should be open for interpretation to everyone. And if that is not the case, then you're not acting as a real artist. Then just sorry, you aren't.
Return to nothing.
So if you start with this thing, now that isn't to say, to kind of back off on my snobbish statement here, that the art can't be designed around a message and the art shouldn't be telling people anything, that it should just be this useless thing that people see and they derive their own meaning and feeling from it. There is a level of this that I will kind of excuse, in that you
behold the tools of creation.
In the idea that if the artists themselves are feeling something and they make art to express, let's see, can I get an elemental here? Nope, I'm just gonna do this.
Behold the
Great
tools
idea.
of creation.
So yeah, I'll back off on that statement a little bit. If you're feeling an emotion and that causes you to make an art piece, yes, that's something in the backstory that you can say if asked, but it's still, in my mind, most art should be pretty nebulous and pretty stupid. And it shouldn't be so obvious in the art itself that it's explaining itself or preaching itself. And let's face it, video games approach a different form of storytelling that's a little bit more focused on selling a narrative than what I think real art. And this is an art video games, there's art argument against it, which usually I'd make the exact opposite argument. But they are designed on telling you a story and making you feel emotion, and if a character goes through an experience and you as the viewer go along with that experience, that's fine and all, but it shouldn't be so singularly focused and so unnuanced. Nobody wants to see protesters shouting slogans and holding up signs. Nobody. Regardless of whether you agree with the protester is saying and shouting and what's said on the signs, or you completely disagree with it, it's not a good way to sell somebody on an experience narrative or anything. It's only a good way to, I don't know what it's really that good for. It's not a good way for discourse or ideas exchange. It just isn't. It shows that you're there, if that's all that you care about, and that you're probably angry, but that's kind of it.
away.
Get this. Let's see. Magnetic steel, life rush.
Unity, precision, perfection. Unity, precision, perfection. Primitive.
I'm not gonna win here. Let's see, I'm ranting here, and I really don't have enough time for this. Alright, so in comparison, you have the 3 games mentioned in this article by the ESA, which is looking less and less relevant by every day. You have the drag queen fight game. So if you want a fighting game and you're going to put in the Smithsonian, you have a lot of choices there. But I think you start with something like Street Fighter 2 Ultra HD Edition. And in that you could definitely put a presentation about how in the loading sequence of Street Fighter 2, in one version there is a African American man who is rather dark skinned, and somehow in the transition from the Japanese version to the Western version, they, I believe, lightened his skin. So there's an incident that happened around the game that's relevant, and there's something that can be the starting of a discussion if you wanted to mention that. And there's probably a whole collection of games where you can mention how there's been changes culturally, localization as it's called, just in a bigger conversation all around the world throughout the history of video games and other medium. The next game is just a game that has disability options. It would make a lot more sense to talk about the new Microsoft accessibility controller. Like, there's really no reason why that wouldn't be a good focus. That's a much more reasonable let's go ahead and get rid of this guy. And yeah, just the Microsoft Disability Controller itself would be a lot better than something nobody's ever heard of, or a single game trying to address disability when that's something that's been supported. You could certainly broaden that out to show the accessories that came out for the NES, like the U-Force. The U-Force in particular was designed to be a disability controller for the NES back in the 80s. That's much more historically relevant than just one game. And then the third game here is someone dealing with the racial anxieties of being profiled via shaving, which the shaving part's stupid. If I'm gonna try to make a game about shaving, I'm
What to do?
well, probably just being an idiot at that point. I can't even just begin to say that's gonna work well. Alright. Let's draw more cards.
My hand is too full.
Well, that's screwed up. How does this only get down to 3 when I have a whole hand full of things?
To battle!
So yeah, racial profiling anxiety games. At the very least, you could focus on a game like Not Tonight, which is the more relevant at the time game around the idea of Brexit and racial profiling, and or Papers, Please. That would be more impactful in that way. You could make some statements around. You can make some conversation, I think, around
Great idea.
the fact that there's a significant amount of African American gangsters shown in the GTA series in particular, or the Saints Row series. It's not an issue, I think, as much in video games though at all. If anything, I think you could easily show that amongst other forms of media, I think there is a lot more people of African American descent that play video games than they do engage in other forms of music. Like, I don't think there's, or other forms of TV. There's been a long-running issue of there being the BET style of entertainment specifically targeted and made for African American audiences, whereas there really isn't a audience that is targeted like that in the case of video games. They want to play Call of Duty as much as any other racial group wants to play Call of Duty. They want to play Halo as much as anybody else. They want to play Fortnite. They want to play Minecraft. So video games have been actually rather well to bring people together to have similar experiences, whereas previous experiences in other forms of entertainment have been either very pandering or divisive, and as far as that goes. So yeah, that's a long rant to say the ESA and their stupid breaking barriers presentation is yet another example of an SJW run terrible presentation. I think the Smithsonian is in New York, so maybe it works well in New York. I'm looking. You look at this picture here. Doesn't seem like it's too heavily populated for the Smithsonian, quite frankly. I also wouldn't be surprised if locals never go to the Smithsonian anyway, so these might be all out of Manhattan, out of New York tourists. So yeah, your opinion you can form here based on the audience, but I would say that is not that big. This seems like this is all done outside in some kind of courtyard on tables, so it didn't even look like the Smithsonian let them in an area that would be properly how do you even say it, properly lit, properly protected. If the Smithsonian really thought there was any art there, you would think they would protect it from the elements, direct sun damage, and such. So this, to me, feels like it is almost certainly they rented out space effectively out of the Smithsonian. And this may not even be actually at the Smithsonian, it might be just supported by. Yeah, I would much better suggest you look at a National Video Game Museum pop-up presentation somewhere that they have one of those, if they're having one of those, or just go to the National Video Game Museum themselves if you want to see a more accurate and important and educational presentation on video games. Well, this guy is goofing around, and I guess I'm kind of goofing around too, so I might actually be able to win here.
Quickly.
Let's see. Let's hit that. Then end the turn. So, moving on, we have a game on Steam here called 8 Eyes. Now, 8 Eyes, there was an anime, I think, called 8 by 8 Eyes that was a lesser known early 90s OAV. I don't think it has anything to do with this, I'm just remembering that. This is from Pico Interactive, and if I recall correctly, Pico Interactive is known for publishing old games. Not inherently games that you want to play, although the blue highlighting does indicate that some of these games are on my wish list. Pico Interactive seems to kind of scrape almost the bottom of the barrel as far as old games to republish and put out. Old NES games, old DOS games. Well, this looks like a real NES Castlevania clone. I guess I could be generous and put it on the follow list, but almost certainly, unless there was something to this that I don't know, I would say, well, why would I want to play an old NES Castlevania clone when I would prefer to play just Bloodstained Ritual of the Moon? Or, this is $5.94 discounted. English with full audio. By the way, I don't know where it is yet, but Steam is going to let you start marking games that you own on other platforms. So stop recommending the game to you, but then you'll also have the ability darn it. Darn it. I'm gonna have to play casual. This is gonna ask for too many victories. I was close there too. I could have won, I'm fairly certain. I guess I'll put this on the follow list. Let's see. Yeah, I'm still logged in, so maybe there's somewhere else. Alright, here we go. Here it is. So it's hidden under the pull down menu. Ignore this game by default. I played on another platform. Hide from store, can be used to generate recommendations. So in theory, that's almost the thing you needed always on Steam, because now that means you could potentially have two launchers. Now I think eventually you still run into the same issue, which is that if you have 3 launchers and let's say most of your games are on Steam, and then some, let's say, are on the Epic Store and some are on Uplay, if you see that note that says, well, I have this on a different platform, you're still having to figure out how to go launch Epic Store and potentially finding, oh, it's not on the Epic Store, actually it's on Uplay. And it just gets more complicated with each extra launcher you have. But I think pretty easily and pretty quickly you're going to find people making Chrome plugins that will take games you own on different stores and marking them as owned on Steam. That doesn't solve the issue in totality, because I'm still I want to either be completely devastated if Steam shut down, and at that point, if Steam shut down, I think everybody would just resort to piracy 100%. Like the entire PC gaming market would probably collapse in a one fell swoop. So I want everything on Steam so I can always reinstall it and install it. I don't trust that the Epic Store is going to be around in 5 years, 10 years. I don't trust that Uplay is going to be around and still working the way it does in 5 years to 10 years. It might still be around in name only, but I don't know that really will boil down to being able to reinstall the games. But it certainly is a helpful first step, and it cost Valve and Steam nothing to add that click box. It cost them a little in development, but not a lot, maybe a week or two to add it to their database, and then it gives them the benefit of even better targeted marketing and even better information, which as a storefront, every bit of consumer or customer research you can get can be very helpful. That's why you have all these loyalty cards and things like that. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Mew, M-E-U. This, I guess, might stand for Muse. It looks like it's a VR game where you just wiggle your arms around left and right and you get ridiculous effects, and if you don't wiggle your arms around, it'll eventually dissolve into a humanoid looking form. So this is really just a tech demo. Early access, free to play for VR, I guess the price is right. English only, but yeah, definitely not anything quality enough. Alright. Are we ready? I don't think we're ready yet. The real way to win here is you've got to wait till you have both of these or the legendary Archmage Antonidas. I can't even believe I'm playing this style strategy. I hate it so much. Next we have a game on Steam, Extraction Valley Devil's Cause. This looks like it is a Halo clone. There is a level of visual polish here, though. And let's face it, not all the Halo games are on Steam yet. The Halo Master Collection, I think, will come to Steam eventually. So I can't really call this just an asset flip first-person shooter, because it doesn't look like that. It looks like somebody's really trying something here. It is from a developer that has nothing else on Steam. It is asking for $9.99 and it's early access with full English audio. But it is a quality looking game. Quality enough to at least deserve a follow list. So on it goes. And I'm just clicking the button right now to put it on the follow list. Alright.
Someday I'll be just like you.
Time runs out on me.
Do I want to do anything else? These are all just spells. Let's just do that. I think that's all I really need to do. This costs 2, this costs 1, this costs 1. I guess maybe I could try and destroy these and see if maybe I would get lucky and get another Sorcerer's Apprentice. That seems unrealistically high odds. The odds don't sound like they'd be on my side. I'll forget that. Next we have a game on Steam called Agnes, which looks like a platformer shooter. This feels like it's a half troll in its animation style. What would you call that? The Mad Head game that came out recently with that cool animation and the bosses.
I wonder.
This feels like it's a clone of that game that I can't remember the name of anymore in a lot of ways. But then it also feels like it's a troll game. And it says episode 1 now available on Android and PC. This and this and this and this and this and this. Try that. That'll give me a bunch more spells. Yeah, I cannot get over the trolly looking on this graphics, and the fact that it's episodic, and the fact that you're seeing this guy has glowing forks that look like lightsabers.
We have many secrets.
Cuphead is the name of the game I'm thinking of. That's it. It looks like it's a clone of Cuphead. It's early access for $7.49, discounted. It has 3 achievements, full audio English. It's from a company that seems like they've made their entire company and publishing company name to also confuse. Let's see, if we just look up Cuphead, which let's compare here. Studio MDHR Entertainment made Cuphead. The animation looks way more polished, and it really had to be, because that's kind of the only thing that sells Cuphead. It's $19.99, and you're going to get that free DLC, I believe, also. And so going back to this in comparison, there's not a good reason for this game to kind of exist. Right. This and let's see, this and in return, I'm playing so terribly. So terribly today. And is there really even a reason to go to the European account if I'm not getting victories on the Americas account? Not really. Let's start burning through the news though. Because you know what? I'm starting to get frustrated. I think this will be our last game. Let's go to the European account. Maybe we can get some other things done, and then I'll come back and play this off screen. Frankly, when you get a lot of these daily quests, the way I get them done is I just start a game and then don't do anything and hope the person gets frustrated and concedes. I basically cheat, because these daily quests take way too long, and I'm not even saying they take way too long because I'm a YouTuber and because I have 3 accounts. They take way too long for a normal person to do. I don't want to every 3 days have to log into Hearthstone and struggle to get victories. And maybe the experience would be a little bit different if I was just every time I go to the bathroom playing one game of Hearthstone, which even that one game of Hearthstone takes about 40 minutes. That's quite a long bathroom break. Yeah, I've screwed this up terribly. That spell just does not work the way I think it works. But yeah, Hearthstone is just a nightmare when you're trying to get victories. It really is. It would be kind if they would just hard limit the number of victories required down to 3 in total. If they got rid of the idea of win 3 games with either a mage or shaman and brought it down to just win 3 games always, or potentially win 1 game with a mage or shaman for 60. 5 years in, this is just asking way too much to get 6 victories. And you can see I'm much closer now to getting taunts done, which was the one I was not focusing on, than I am getting victories here. So let's hopefully get something different on the European account and move forward. And then also let's start burning through the news. Gamer Sutra has a story here exploring the secret depths of Bubble Bobble's design. Might be interesting if you're into looking into the development of an old game, if there's actual information that's useful here. A game like Bubble Bobble, you had very tight limitations on how you hard-coded the sprites and the graphics, also tight limitations on how to program everything. Bubble Bobble is an example of a game that had a lot of levels, so it had to have some way of constantly generating or storing all of those levels. Alright. So what do we have for the European account? Well, we have win 3 Tavern Brawls, which sucks. And then we'll win a game with the Rogue or Warrior, and win a game with our Hunter and Mage, or play Priest cards. So let's do the Tavern Brawl prematurely to get here, since it is really just a regular thing. Play as the Hunter, start through the progress of getting at least 1 or 2 of the Tavern Brawls done. Maybe we'll meet up with the Priest cards and play some Priest cards here too. If we get at least 1 victory here rather quickly, then we could go play Priest. Anyways, that article
Let the hunt begin.
might be of interest if you're into learning about the development of old games. Otherwise, probably not. Alright, take that, I guess. We'll get rid of that one. Gamatsu has an article. Shantae 5 has been officially titled Shantae and the Seven Sirens. First details and screenshots. We've had a little bit of details come out, but they have a full information. This is the newest Shantae game was being
Quickly.
let's go with Rogue.
Job done.
Well, at any point I can draw the rest of my deck. Shantae was the cutscenes were being animated by a well-known animation studio, so expect that Shantae 5's cutscenes will be beautiful. It says in this description that it will have gorgeously animated TV-style cutscenes. It'll have 4K resolution, hand-painted visuals on 4K devices only. All new characters and returning favorites. So another Shantae game. I really need to get on the ball about playing a Shantae game. I don't think I own Shantae 1, and that's what keeps tripping me up. And then THQ Nordic had their announcements, their quarterly meetings type shareholders meetings, and with that a lot of information has been released as far as acquisitions and things in development. So we're going to have a long run of THQ announcement things that we're going to run through. But first, TechRaptor has an article, new NES games coming to the Nintendo Switch in August. Kung Fu Heroes, which is a game nobody's really heard of, or I don't recall. And then Vice Project Doom. I had already seen an article mentioning these. Bad selection, frankly. Both seem like they're Kung Fu games. So, and definitely not recognizable. There's something, there's a lot more that could be released or should have been released at this point. And to kind of come on top of that story, a new patent hints at a Super NES controller coming to the Nintendo Switch. The reason why you would want a Super NES style controller now is because, remember, there are NES controllers that connect to the Switch to play those old NES games, so they come with the online service. So this is an indication that for holiday season, Christmas season this year, they're going to try and push Super NES games. And almost certainly next year they're going to try and push the Super Nintendo 64 games if they can emulate those relatively well on the Switch, which should be able to get more. It'll just take a lot more effort. I believe the story I heard is the only thing that was actually released was the back of the controller, and it doesn't really seem to indicate that there's even buttons on the top, so it might just be where here you have big gray buttons that stick up, here you don't see that. It might be that they've just thought of going back to a Super NES style controller in general, while changing the front buttons quite a bit, which would be weird, certainly. I don't see how you could have something that feels like a Super NES controller and then actually is a what does this do? Yeah, I don't know what you could do to make the Switch buttons feel better. Replace the Joy-Cons with something like this, particularly without shoulder buttons. But I imagine whatever Nintendo is doing, if they release something new and not just an emulation of their old controllers, it'll be new and different.
Show them no mercy.
So here's the beginnings of stories from THQ. This sadly is a Polygon article. New Saints Row game deep in development at Volition. THQ Nordic drops a flurry of news about Dead Island, Time Splitters, and Saints Row. Jeez, all that information, and there's so many ads here. Here. Disable the ad blocker, first of all, at the very top. Add here for another article, add here for another article. 3-sentence paragraph or 1-sentence paragraph. Maybe a 4-sentence paragraph, maybe a 4-sentence paragraph, and then a bulleted list with 3 things on it, and that is it. And then you have ads here, comments, and then ads here. And then the legal at the bottom. That's It's not a good website for sure. Not what I would want. So yeah, we'll get maybe little bits of details more, but I think in general it is just going to be overall statements that these games are in development. Tech Raptor has an article. Jupiter Hell is a reloading simulator with demons. Let's see. Seems to be a review game of a game. And Jupiter Hell does not look too interesting based on those screenshots. Let's see. Jupiter Hell's intense strategy combined with non-stop action, no pun intended, is what makes it great. It's easy to pick up and play while still producing the right amount of challenge. I look forward to seeing the finished product. So this is kind of a hype article anyways. This looks to me to be just like a top-down twin-stick shooter, dungeon crawler type game. It looks dark for no reason, and it looks pretty generic in the tile set, and like there's no enemies at all. I didn't see a single enemy. So yeah, that doesn't look that interesting.
You're in trouble now.
This beast will not be tamed. I move quickly.
So yeah, that's a hype article. Alright, well the timer is reset because here we have a game that is tagged nudity and sexual content, and it's from our friends at Xseed. It's another Sinran Kagura game. I saw a YouTuber talking about the most banned game ever, lewd game in particular, most banned lewd game. And it was a game made by the creators that went on to make Sinran Kagura before that point. And it's something nobody would have ever really heard of. And it happened probably earlier in the experience. So this is mostly positive already. I wanted this game. This is an immediate on the wishlist game. In all fairness, I think I probably could play Sinran Kagura Peach Ball. This is the pinball game with these ninja anime girls. Probably could play this without any real issues at all. And at least spotlight it. I wouldn't want to show the cutscenes though. It's $35.99, which is asking a high price certainly, and it's full Japanese audio and a lot of other language supported. So if you like anime ninja girls from the Sinran Kagura series, or you like pinball, which I like both of those things, that's out there.
You get ahead, and you get ahead. I fight dirty.
There we go. So yeah. Again, I have yet to figure out how I would cover these kinds of games. If there's a lot of nudity in it, or a lot of sexually explicit dialogue in it. Dialogue's not even really that big of a deal. You'd probably never get flagged with a sexually explicit dialogue. Like the reason I would guess that on YouTube is I have never seen an incident, and you almost know that this would have been the case. Somebody somewhere would have thought about just having somebody in a dark room, like a woman with bright red lipstick in a dark room. The camera's just focused on her lips and she's talking in a microphone and she's just describing sexually explicit content, or reading a romance visual novel. That would be a copyright infringement just to read the romance visual novel. But if it was something they wrote themselves, a dramatic reading of something like that, that would almost certainly work rather well on on YouTube, and yet nobody's tried it, so either it doesn't work that well and I have no clue what works well on YouTube, which is probably true, or YouTube has just never caught anybody who's done that, so I wouldn't be surprised if people are doing that. Do any of these have taunt? Let's do
Enter the
this.
shadows.
There it goes. Give something stealth for no reason.
Coward before me!
10.
You're in trouble now.
Blades ready.
There we go. So yeah, I think, and I could be wrong about this, I think I'd have to think it through some more. But yeah, I think any level of gameplay footage with explicit dialogue, probably not a big deal. When I covered Honey Pop, there was plenty of lines of dialogue in Honey Pop that I felt no need to censor, and I definitely felt the need to censor and blur when people were getting into see-through underwear, at the very least. Maybe that has more to do with just where my head was at that point, but yeah. That's an example of a game that would be very much appreciated if it was gifted to me,
Blades ready.
because then I don't have the risk or the need or the desire to have a bunch of videos that potentially at some point might pay back for the price of that game. That being said, Senran Kagura Peach Ball is probably not the Senran Kagura game to buy right now. There's probably much older Senran Kagura games I don't have that are cheaper, and I should just start with like the first in the series that's available on Steam, and work my way up. I think Peach Beach Splash, the Splatoon clone game, is still... I lost again. Darn it. I think that's still much more of an issue in a game than... I just gotta get away from all of these daily quests that require victories. I'm just gonna play priest cards. I'm not having a good day. I really am not having fun here with all these losses, and maybe it's just it put me in a bad mood or what. I don't feel like I was in a bad mood when I started playing Hearthstone, but I don't feel like I'm in a good mood now. And on that thought, I need to just burn through the news and the games. Here we have a game called Zombies Faulty Towers, which if it really was a zombie slash Faulty Towers British comedy combo of a game, I would actually find that hilarious and silly. But it's not really. This is a... what is that? Angry Birds clone? It's just a low effort combination of Angry Birds and zombies. $3.99, but it requires VR too. English full audio. I have no idea who their target audience is, and I don't think they know who their target audience is either, because that's not what you'd want at all. It's just a Angry Birds physics game. Let's see. Let me double check this. Next, we have a game on Steam called The Misadventures of Laura Silver, which is tagged as a mystery indie visual novel story-rich noir game. There are all tags there. I like the animation style on the thumbnail. I like the animation style I'm seeing here. The question is this really a visual novel so much, or is this actually a just closer to an adventure game. It actually seems like everything is animated well, but it does scare me a little bit by the number of characters I have seen. And this is chapter 1, so they're trying to promise a lot here. Now, some of the animation as I'm seeing actual gameplay is not as well done. There is what I would say is probably a slight lack of skill in the animation style. And then you're going with the weird child or small character, and then some rather adult looking characters, which seems odd to say the least. I don't see anything here bad enough to scare me away as far as the Western visual novel goes. Most Western visual novels look so awful. This looks like somebody's trying. It's $6.79, and English and Turkish. I'm going to put it on the follow list, but I do have to remind myself and remember that it is not acceptable to buy a game that is portioned out off like this until the entire game is done. So I'll buy the complete collection. This is the first game from this developer. What's funny here too is they have the new release chapter 1 come out, but then they don't bother to put a upcoming release of chapter 2. It's not labeled as early access. I think Steam needs to eventually jump onto the train of saying if something is episodic, it is early access. I know people are not going to be happy with being forced to be labeled early access when they don't want to, but it is much more consumer friendly if they were. Like, people need to recognize episodic means early access until the entire series, the entire story is told. Alright, let's see. Jeez, all I could do is play these, and that's... I'll mention it, even though I'm not planning on covering or playing Borderlands 3. They're doing a heavy push at 2K and Gearbox are to promote Borderlands 3. Probably this was ordered as soon as they saw they started to get some negative press for doing what I believe was close to 100 false DMCA strikes on a leaker. And there's another story here that there's this character that they're promoting, FL4K, who's a robot, who's genderless because he's a robot. So they, them, I guess, pronouns, and they're making a big deal about that, at least in the forums. There's probably some idiot just running the forums, but he is apparently banning people who misgender the robot in your fake story. Which seems like, yeah, it's a SJW woke garbage thing, which doesn't play and make any sense in Borderlands at all. This was my fear in part that I was saying a year ago. Like, you can go back and look at my footage of Borderlands 2 and you can see that I said, I am not sure that the people who work for Borderlands now can make a game that feels like Borderlands 1 or Borderlands 2, because they're going to be so SJW and so woke about everything that the dumb college frat jokes that were put into Borderlands 1 and 2 aren't going to be acceptable anymore. And it seems like that's the case. What I didn't see coming, I'll fully admit, is that 2K would take the reins of what Randy Pitchford had done to ruin all the goodwill for Borderlands 3 and add it to an Epic Store exclusive to piss a bunch of people off, and then false DMCA somebody on YouTube, which was going to piss off a lot of people regardless anyways, and just do a bunch of ridiculous things. Now I'm getting victories, but it's not mattering. It's not mattering one bit. I'm not playing ranked, and I'm not playing the cards that I want to play. So yeah, they're trying to make a big push, trying to get everybody back on the hype train for Borderlands 3. I never expected that they would have done enough to convince people to actually boycott it. I never would have said, like I said in the last, expected that I would have said, I'm not going to play Borderlands the pre-sequel, a game I already own, or Borderlands 3, a game that I was hyped to own. I was planning on purchasing it 6 months after the exclusivity deal. Now I'm not planning on purchasing it ever. I'm not planning on covering it, simply because if they do false DMCA strikes on a leaker they don't like, what's going to stop them from doing false DMCA strikes and trying to destroy my channel? Like, I can't risk my channel for 2K. Speaking of mega corporations that will probably very quickly start to abuse the DMCA system on Steam, the CBS Viacom merger was announced. CBS and Viacom split a few years ago, and now they got merged back together. So that doesn't, on the face of it, immediately mean that they're going to that they're going to start putting a bunch of DMCA copyright strikes on people. But I think they're going to very quickly start to put a bunch of copyright strikes. You'll see people who are making fair use of anything from like a bit from a late show section will get struck, and a bunch of Comedy Central things will get struck and such. Unless, I mean, fingers crossed, I don't really have any faith that this would happen, but fingers crossed there might be some thing that happens where the right people are put in charge and they don't act like a bunch of jerks as far as the copyright in YouTube is concerned, but I doubt it. CBS and Viacom both have been trying to turn YouTube into something that is owned by large media corporations like them, and YouTube and Susan Wojcicki have been more than willing to let that happen, and more than happy to let that happen. So I don't see a real reason why that would change. I also heard a story that there's a like Google News service or something that has a weird blacklist that leaked out. I've also seen a story that apparently Google internally is starting to fall apart because it has become so politically divisive inside of inside of itself and amongst employees. Much like the world in general has become incredibly politically divisive. I think the difference there is they stupidly decided at some point that it would have been a smart idea to allow and encourage public conversation amongst employees and political conversation amongst employees, when anybody else who's running the business knows, like, you don't talk politics and religion in polite society or at work. And had YouTube had that policy, I think they certainly would potentially run into the issue that they're running into. Also, I think what you're running into is you have a lot of people who are technological style thinkers a lot of engineers, and engineers have a tendency to think a different way than SJWs tend to think. Yeah, I don't think you have that many insanely woke SJW IT people out there. And so you have a clash between the people who actually run Google and then the people who are running the HR at Google or running some other unimportant service. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Engineer Arena. It looks like it's a player versus player, low polygon style shooter game. Maybe it's in VR? No, it isn't. It's $4.96 discounted, English only. This doesn't look polished enough to be anything anybody would want to play. So that's not making it to the follow list. That. And that. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here, Might and Delight to announce a new online RPG in September. This looks like it might be an interesting RPG, but it's so zoomed out it's kind of hard to tell. I guess it would just be a online MMO type game though. Or I've never heard of Might and Delight. Some interesting Might Magic spin-off of the name. The tiny multiplayer online game. Well, maybe they're selling themselves a little bit weird. This is from the developer of the Shelter series, who those games were always kind of small and niche too. But if you were going to make an RPG and you were going to say, well, this is like a traditional RPG, it's just that we decided in 2019 that it should have online playability and multiplayer capability, I don't think anybody would be too mad at that, really. Like, that sounds like a good idea, and that definitely doesn't go into the realm of a massively multiplayer online game, and how expensive it would be to create that. So maybe we're approaching a point where people have realized, yes, we need our online game, our RPG games to have an online element, not because we want to sell microtransactions or sell a service, but because we just want people who are going to be playing a lot to be able to play with their friends and not have a solo experience. I mean, you're going to have a pretty lonely childhood if you spent your entire time playing Final Fantasy 1 by yourself and then Final Fantasy 2, 3, 4, all the way up to like 12 or 13. That would have been a considerable amount of time that you would have spent alone.
Free of that blasted tower! Job's done.
So yeah, that kind of makes sense, but it also is something I'd like to see adopted and implemented before I make a final judgment. The main thing I would think is you kind of need drop in, drop out. So online, you're playing, you're controlling a team, somebody connects to your game, a friend of yours connects to your game, they're now playing as one of the other characters. Take their pick on a team of 4, and then ideally you'd have like at most 4 people.
I just want some peace and
Four people playing online, controlling the actions and the fighting. But still, that'd be kind of questionable about when you're on the overworld, who's controlling the movement and who's going where. I guess the same is true for like Diablo 3 compared to Diablo 1. Diablo 1, I don't think you could have any any other players on the screen. Diablo 3, you could have other players on the screen. It improved the game slightly, not significantly, but the concept improved it a little bit. Next we have a game on Steam here called Rogue Glitch. This is a platform player versus player Smash Brothers clone from the looks of it. It doesn't look that interesting. It's early access, $9.99, English with subtitles only. Interesting. So, yeah. This. And this. And this. And then that. There we go. OpenCritic has the reviews for Ion Fury, the game that was forced to change its name from Iron Maiden. It seems like the critic rating is strong. Top critic average is 81%. Critics recommended 67%. I think for the people who wanted a Duke Nukem clone style game, this is what you're getting is probably good. But I'm not really at the point where I think it's something I would want to play. Game Informer gave it a 9 out of 10, but I'm not sure if that's not just the way that Game Informer always works. Notice when you look here, you have PC Gamer giving it a score, something from a site I've never heard of, something from a site I've never heard of, IGN giving it 7.5, another site I've not heard of, another site I've not heard of, another site I've not heard of. Eurogamer apparently doesn't give scores. Another site I haven't heard of, PC Games In, gave it a 9 out of 10. Game Informer 9 out of 10. Destructoid 8 out of 10. TechRaptor 9 out of 10. There's a lot of games here. A lot of top critics and mainstream video game journalists that I'm just kind of glad I don't even know who they are. But yeah, if you are interested in the look and the style of that gameplay, Iron Fury I think probably is a good game to pick up. Now, if I were to speculate here for a second, I bet you could probably ignore Iron Fury for 6 months and not miss it, and then get it a lot cheaper than whatever it's selling for now. I would suspect heavily you could wait quite a while, and then it will eventually get down to a very high amount. Oh, come on.
Your magic shall not save you.
Your rage sustains me.
Let's see. We have a Gamatsu article, Gamasutra article here. Tencent is doubling down on season passes as mobile titles drive revenue. So, yeah, more season passes coming to anybody who is playing something like PUBG or anything else from Tencent. Or potentially, if Tencent ever becomes a controlling influence of the companies they've invested in, more season passes in general. Not even playing priest cards that fast. TechRaptor has an article. A legal storm is brewing for Epic Games over the Fortnite data breach. I think we've already talked about this, but it seems like it is definitely a case of information being lost and those people suffering harm and damages. So, lawsuits are pending. This kind of surprised me. Gamatsu has an article, Doom Eternal Battle Mode Multiplayer Overview Trailer. I thought they were getting rid of the multiplayer, but I guess maybe they were getting rid of the snap map. What they said is it wasn't going to be much of a focus on multiplayer, but clearly it still needs to exist. Even if I'm not a super fan of the fact that they focused on multiplayer, it kind of needs to exist because that's going to be something that would get people to play more of Doom Eternal, and you want it to actually live up to its title of Eternal. It seems like you play as the demon.
Is someone injured?
Half the time in the what was it, a 2 versus 1 multiplayer mode. It says you play either as a fully loaded Slayer or a team of 2 player controlled demons. The Slayer and the demon's objective may be the same, destroy the other side, but their play styles are entirely different. Okay, yeah. It seems like that's kind of a low effort attempt at having a multiplayer element without going crazy with having multiplayer elements. It's kind of backwards, quite frankly. You would more expect that something simplistic like that would have been in the first game, and then something like Snap Map would have come out in the second game. In fact, it probably wouldn't have been a terrible thought had they had a bigger single player storyline experience that was more focused on and better designed in general in the first game, and then just delayed Snap Map to the second game. If Snap Map was a major improvement or a major increase to the second game, that would have been it would have been better received. Next we have a TechRaptor article, Play NYC 2019 Forza Hands On is 4 by Fun.
What to do?
That's a crazy title. This looks like it's a mobile game that I think 4 people maybe play. Or no, it's just 4 in a row. This is just an advertisement for a 4 in a row style game of some kind of mobile game. Why are you giving me advertisements and hype articles for mobile games at this point, TechRaptor? You're getting worse. You're getting really, really, really worse.
Time runs out on me. Oh.
Your magic shall not save you.
Right away.
There we go. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article, Spywatch Lexus combines adventure and language skills in one big package. This looks like it's a Chinese RPG Maker game. Maybe there's something here. Spywatch Lex. I randomly was looking at hearing aids, and frankly, I probably need to be tested at hearing aids. High frequencies have started ringing too loud in my ears. I'm getting better hearing, I think, than I would. So it seems like it's a drag and drop like language game. Maybe there's something to it. I kind of go the same way every time I see a game like this, though, that video games are probably the worst way to try and learn a language, and gamifying something doesn't mean it will make it a good game by any means. But also, this is a hype article for a game that's not out yet, so whatever. Gamatsu has Borderlands 3 The Borderlands Are Yours trailer, pre-launch previews, gameplay, and screenshots. Just more and more trailers and such. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense that you would... there's so many videos here. So many videos. It seems like each one was released to a different video game journalist website, a mainstream journalist website, to get their attention. So they basically, 2K, Gearbox, bribed VG 24/7 with a exclusive, PlayStation Blog with an exclusive, Kotaku with an exclusive, IGN Japan with 2 exclusive videos, IGN regular with an exclusive, GameSpot with 2 exclusive videos, and let's just kind of quickly see if we can... That screenshot was of Mad Moxie, so are we actually going to see Mad Moxie in this at all, or did they just put a misleading ad on it? I think they just put a misleading ad right there. For like half a second you see Mad Moxie, which they've changed her outfit, which they should have changed her outfit, but it's become more Victorian in their art style and less sleazy, to say the least. And she's bumping one of her slot machines. I gotta play. Forgot I'm playing over here. The slow transfer here on Gearbox, on Borderlands, that is my fear, is as the game becomes more serious, they become less trailer trash people, which is what they were in the original game, just a bunch of trailer trash slash what would be another good descriptor? Well, yeah, I guess trailer trash is about the best descriptors I can say. Redneck, mid-woods, wood-style characters. Backwoods, not mid-woods, backwoods. Famitsu also got a free exclusive video. Apparently they put out 2 exclusive videos on their own channel, and then the trailer, I think, was given out to everybody. So every single one of those mainstream video game journal sites was bribed, and probably as a reward for not pushing as hard as they should have been about the fact that they put out so many false DMCAs against the YouTuber to silence him and intimidate him. Which, why they did that makes very little sense anyways, because if you do it retroactively, if you actually believe they were going to put out this information at this point anyways, then the leak really wouldn't have affected the experience. It really wouldn't have. The people who had seen the leaks up until that point were extremely limited, and I had not heard about any of them until they started DMCAing and had the Streisand effect happen to them. So yeah, I'm not happy with Borderlands 3, 2K, or Gearbox, and yeah, still not gonna buy the game, which is a sad thing to say. TechRaptor has another article, and this will be interesting to see how EA deals with a leak compared to 2K. Although Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville trailer leaked, the leak might have been intentional. EA, known as one of the worst video game companies out there, it would be surprising if they don't do anything. Here we have the videos unavailable. EA is removing all copies of this trailer, so if the trailer above is missing, that's why. So, yeah. Now, in all fairness to actually believing in understanding copyright law, if you're leaking an entire trailer, you might have had a claim for copyright, but you don't, because it's an advertisement, and advertisements can't be copyrighted. So if them EA taking things off just puts EA back in the same position it's always been in, which is to say that they're garbage, and we've known that they were garbage for a long time. I'm thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That was stupid. Let's see. Game of Sutra an article. THQ Nordic acquires Darksiders developer Gunfire and racing studio Milestone, which doesn't make sense. I thought they already owned the developer of Darksiders. Did they just get the license to Darksiders before? Let's see. The Swedish publisher has agreed to purchase the racing game maker Milestone, Darksiders developer Gunfire Games, and the investment company Goodbye Kansas Games Invest. So some of this is just inside money stuff. All three deals come just a month after THQ raised $225 million to finance the purchase of more franchises and game studios. It's crazy that THQ is still going down this path of just acquiring everything and anything. It doesn't feel like they care about making quality or ensuring that every company they acquire actually will make quality games. It seems like a lot of it is just acquisitions for acquisition's sake. This really feels like a pump and dump situation where they're just trying to pump up the valuation of THQ Nordic stock to an insane level and then sell it at the highest point and then have it go bankrupt again. And they're even trying to get a little bit away from the THQ name, which is crazy because they were working towards that. Their parent company has changed their name away from THQ Nordic. That's another story we'll see. TechRaptor has a dark review, So Dang Dark, D-A-R-Q. This was a game that I thought interested me a little bit visually, but I wasn't sure how it was actually going to play. So let's see what they say here. They gave it a 7.0, very good. Dark is a beautifully stylish Tim Burton-esque romp through a subconscious dream world of a young boy, which manages to be spectacular even with a very short length. The minor niggles here and there are easily ignored thanks to the great tone and great amount of polish for the first effort from an indie studio. Pros, highly polished tone and visuals, interesting take on this perspective puzzle gameplay, well animated, reminiscent of a Tim Burton movie. Cons, it's pretty short. It has occasional backtracking and some relatively insane logic. Alright, Dark, I think, is something that I was considering. I guess I didn't have it on the follow list even yet, but yeah, I'll put it on the follow list. Let's not just believe TechRaptor alone, though. Let's see some actual people who put their money where their mouth is and see what they have to say.
I
first.
just want some peace and quiet.
Alright, so anything that hits that is dead. So this. And this. That. And can't do anything else without dying.
Well played.
Yeah, I'm about to lose. Should have played this card too. I'm slowly playing cards. That's about all I can say. Like, I'm slowly playing cards, so I'll get one daily quest on the European account done, and then I think I'm gonna just jump over to the Asian account. Like, this is not a good day. Maybe I'll play a little bit more tomorrow, since I know I'm not gonna be really doing too much work tomorrow anyways, because of plumber inspectors, so I can play around those times. Moving on with the news, we have a hand-drawn animation Ratoid
You asked
Curse
for
of the
it.
Sea Rats has been announced for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. We haven't seen a lot of announcements lately, and I don't really expect to see a lot coming out. There's a video here, we'll look at it in a second. Yeah, I don't expect a lot more announcements to come out. I think we're approaching the end of the year section. Video unavailable. Thanks. Thanks, whatever service. Well, yeah. This might be interesting, it might not. Playing as a rat is not super appealing, but there have certainly been games in the past where you've gotten away with playing as bizarre animalistic creatures. Gamatsu has an article. Team 17 announces its PAX West 2019 lineup, including unannounced titles. So we have Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, a game called Blasphemous, a game called Golf with Your Friends, Automa Chef, Monster Sanctuary, Overcooked 2, and an unannounced title. So this is Yooka-Laylee, this is Overcooked 2, I would suspect this is Blasphemous, this is Golf with Your Friends. So Monster Sanctuary would be my guess as to what this is, which would leave this to be the unannounced game, and it looks like it's probably a simplistic like cell phone puzzle game, if I was to guess, but I could be totally wrong about that, and the image itself could be extremely misleading. I'm more interested in Blasphemous than any of the other ones. Team 17 really going in different directions than where they have been in the past, where they were just making Worms World Party style games over and over again. On the other hand, there is something to be said about the fact that they had Prison Architect, and they drove that into the ground to be extremely successful, and then got tired of it and I believe sold it off. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Dum Dum, the story of Hogo OS 1985 edition. Let's see. Travel back to 1985 and discover more about the self-proclaimed greatest operating system of all time. Navigate the weird quirks of Hogo OS 1985 edition. Solve puzzles, play mini games, and unravel the story behind the one thing. Why this one-time cutting-edge computer system has mysteriously been lost to time. I don't think there was a Hogo OS game. This feels like this is probably gonna be not that interesting of a game, but there might be something here. Early access for $12.74. I'm gonna put it on the follow list because what you have here is a polished cutscene. It's from an unknown developer though, so this could be a bait and switch. Definitely could be a bait and switch. But I'll see if people actually buy the game and actually try it. It probably wouldn't be that interesting to cover even if people did like it. So I'd have to consider that too a little bit. Although I guess a good game is a good game, and if I want to play good games regardless of whether it looks good on YouTube. That should really be my last concern at this point, is will it get me a bunch of YouTube views? I did get 2 subscriptions in a relatively short amount of time, so nice. Yep, only 700 more and I'll be up to 1,000 subscriptions. And maybe could monetize again. Or more likely they'll change the number. It was kind of nice to hear that they were considering lowering the number of subscriptions required, because it at least tells you that they aren't considering increasing the number of subscriptions required, which if you told me that YouTube was gonna pull the rug out from under me again and increase the number of subscriptions to like 5,000 or 10,000 before you can monetize, I would not be surprised. Gamatsu has an article, Medieval Remake Behind the Scenes Developer Diary and Screenshots. If you're interested, there's been frankly too much information and hype over this PlayStation 4 exclusive, I believe, game. 5 more cards, as I'm just falling further and further down the rank. Gamatsu has an article, Bubble Bobble 4 Friends has been announced for the Switch, a new numbered series game for Bubble Bobble, which I don't think Bubble Bobble 3 may have come out 10-15 years ago. It's kind of surprising. And yeah, it looks like a modern take on Bubble Bobble. Not to be confused with Puzzle Bobble. Okay. It's interesting, certainly, to see that that there are some instances here where games from the past have now managed to gain a new fan base via the Switch and a new generation of retro gaming fans. Gamatsu has an article, Cooking Mama Cookstar, first information and screenshots. It's been a few years, I think, since a Cooking Mama game came out. So over 90 recipes in traditional and vegetarian mode, up to 2 players. With a Switch and Joy-Con, I imagine Cooking Mama will work still fine. But also, because it's a lot of waggling, I wouldn't be surprised if no Cooking Mama game ever gets ported to PC, and it's not a huge loss if it doesn't. Yeah, the game is running into technical problems. Here we have a game, Hidden Mysteries Royal Family Secrets. This is a hidden object game from Gunner Games at $6.39 discounted. That's not a bad price, considering how a lot of the Big Fish games collector's editions are $12. So yeah, not a bad price. Gamatsu has an article, Need for Speed Heat has been announced for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. it's been a while since there's been a Need for Speed game, so we could definitely use that. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game that is for next generation consoles. As such, I bet it will look pretty, very possibly not take the best advantage of the new consoles, and then not be the best racer for the next generation of consoles. It's called the Ultimate Street Racers vs. Cop Fantasy, due out on November 8th. I don't know how it could come out in November though. That's a problem. That does not line up with the release of a new console. Next, Gamatsu has an article. The romance visual novel Arcade Spirits is coming to the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch in early 2020. Interesting. A romance around an arcade. Well, I think most gamers' true loves lie in the back with the arcade machines more than they with a arcade manager. But whatever. Let's see. There is a visual novel, a Japanese visual novel, that apparently has been released censored on Steam. I think, though, I would say this is intentional advertising. That video did not look like it showed a nice lineup of characters that would interest me. It seems like it was too few characters and not varied enough. Yeah. At the moment, I'm coming kind of from the opinion that the reason why Japanese visual novels are being censored on Steam is because the sellers of those games are trying to sell them uncensored on their own website, more than Steam being part of the problem. Maybe in the background it is Steam being part of the problem, but it seems odd that they have started selling the uncensored versions instead of just giving away an uncensored patch. So who knows where we are in the state of games, but whatever, we'll see. We'll have to wait until somebody speaks out, until more of this story is revealed. This is a case where, frankly, if I was a real investigative journalist, I would be seeking out people, sending out emails, trying to get in contact with people that work at Valve in secret and get whistleblowers to give me bits of information. Gamatsu has an article. Monkey King Hero is back, coming for the West for PS4 PC on October 7th. This is THQ Nordic is going to publish this. I've never heard of a series called Monkey King Hero is back, so it's just a Chinese game based on the fantasy movie Monkey King Hero is back, which is based on one of the Chinese great novels that they make everything based on. So, yeah. Frankly, it doesn't look super interesting. You saw a lot of Chinese-looking named companies there. So what is the game itself? It looks like it's a beat-em-up game in a 3D environment. Looks cartoony, looks like it might be a little kid-friendly, although being a beat-em-up, it might be a little violent. I don't know if there's any actual other gameplay here, or if this is just, like, the way this looks, it kind of looks like you mostly just walk down a area, a path, and then run into an enemy, and then fight them, and then you walk down to another path, and then you get into boss fights. So it feels more like a boss rush mode then it feels like there's other elements like platforming or puzzle solving, which makes it look really simplistic. I'm one priest card away. Oh, this is ridiculous. And the game comes with a season pass, which gives additional stories available in the DLC. One called Uproar in Heaven and one called Mind Palace, and 2 in-game costumes, as well as special items that can be utilized within the game. Yeah, not excited for this. This is what censorship gets you. This is what government control on what are going to be the national popular books, what are going to be taught in schools gets you. Is you have the same thing created over and over again and talked about over and over again. And ironically, for the Monkey King series, the best thing to ever come out and be derived loosely on that Monkey King story is Dragon Ball, which gets very quickly away from that story and moves on to just telling its own story. TechRaptor has an article. THQ Nordic releases its quarterly report announcing new titles and acquisitions. Let's see if we can break this down. They don't break it down well here. Let's see. Volition is deep in development with a brand new Saints Row game. We have entrusted Dam Buster Studios with the Dead Island franchise. So a new company is working on Dead Island 2. So that now the leading the development. By the way, this quotation mark and then these dashes indicate to me that they are misquoting people and cutting out elements of what was said. Fish Labs is working on a new IP as well as a number of unannounced projects. I have no idea who Fish Labs is. I've never heard of them. And then last year, Deep Silver acquired the much-loved Time Splitters ID. We're delighted to announce that one of the series creators, Steve Ellis, has joined us to help plot the future course for this franchise. So they're actually working on Time Splitters. Gunfire Games, developer of the Darksiders series, and Milestone SRL, developers of the Monster Energy Supercross series. One of those is not like the other. Were recently purchased by THQ Nordic. So I don't know if purchase just means they had maybe some investment in those companies before and now they own them outright, or if they were purchased and they had a license to the Darksiders series before. The remaster of SpongeBob Battle for the Bikini Bottom is probably the most exciting game that you can mention. Darksiders Genesis might be good, and a game called Songs for Conquest. I don't even remember them announcing that one. Remember THQ also had that whole 8chan issue, which certainly backfired for them and didn't get them good press. So they could use better press and more good press. And they really didn't even try it again anymore. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say here from this article. It's not a lot to say, really.
Not on my watch.
Game of Citra has a job listing. Get a job. Redlands Games is hiring a senior programmer. That's in Redmond, Washington. Seems to be a third-party developer who's worked with Warner Brothers, Microsoft, Activision, and Square Enix. Okay. If you want to be a senior programmer, and you can be a senior programmer. Next, we have a game called an article from Gamatsu. Ocean World Fantasy Aerial Combat RPG. The Falconer is the name of the game. Has been announced for PC. It's coming out in 2020. I think The Falconer is it already available on something else, or is this the first releasing of this? First announcement of it. There was a game where you were basically playing as a falconer, but I guess it wasn't called the Falconer. I still don't know if you can make a full game around that. Like, that's a concept that could have been, and I believe was done. Like, I believe that, yeah, in Legend of Zelda you had some falcony type stuff, but that's not enough to be the only part of the game. You also probably need some archery and some sword swinging and some collectibles and some puzzles. It could be half your gameplay mechanics, but it really couldn't be all of them. Next we have a Gematsu article, Daymare 1998 for PC launches September 17th, demo now available. This looks actually rather nicely published. It's like not published, polished. Rated M, actual graphics, actual game. This is one of those games that I have to ask is, why was this not shown during E3? Like, the game it's from a developer called Destructive Creations. Like, Destructive Creations is publisher, Invader Studios. They have other games. They apparently published Hatred and ISIS Defense in a game called Folia Dear Father. Maybe this is the problem, is that they are known for putting out or is Defense, it said, or ISIS, Islamic State, I assume is what that was for. Maybe that's the problem. I'll put this on the follow list, but I suspect while this looks extremely polished, there's a bad name behind this developer. Or this publisher, at least. Yeah. I don't know why that's on my wish list, frankly. Actually, it's rated very positive. Even Hatred is rated mostly positive. That they created a bad rating for them, a bad name for themselves, and it didn't really help them with anything.
Your rage sustains me.
Yeah, but I guess I'll put Daymare on the fall list. Apparently, I've now been logged out of Steam, finally. I knew it was going to happen eventually. Gematsu has an article, Oninaki Daemon Lucia gameplay.
Let me
This was the one I think we've already seen, where the animation looks good at the beginning in this like cutscene, and then the actual gameplay is a little bit more zoomed out. It looks like it's a hack and slash. It looks pretty fast paced. It does not look bad by any means. It's a little whitewashed in its color palette, but I think that's an intentional art decision, so I won't really criticize that too much. Seems like maybe you get in these fights and then you have this area you can't escape while you're in the fight, or possibly that's an attack you do. Doesn't look terrible. Of course, this isn't gonna save Square Enix, but might help them. Draw a card, and then do that. Then do that. Then silence a minion. And heal this. Gamatsu has an article. 4A Games is developing a new Metro title. Another entry is in development following Metro Exodus. That's not super surprising. Like THQ Nordic would want them to make another game, even if Metro Exodus had failed miserably. Metro Exodus failed, in my opinion, because it was an Epic Store exclusive, and once it stops being an Epic Store exclusive, I wouldn't be surprised if it sees a pretty hefty bump in people buying it on Steam. I don't know if I'd really want to play it at this point, but I wouldn't be opposed to playing it. And here's the story I was talking about earlier. THQ Nordic to change its parent company group name to Embracer Group. New website and visual identity to be launched on September 17th. So their attempts to get good press is to just change their name, which is not a terrible idea, but it also does get away from the THQ thing that they were going towards, so it shows a lack of direction, and it does seem like that they're not really full of great ideas.
Must consider your rage sustains me.
If they did have good ideas, they wouldn't they wouldn't just be changing their name, they'd be spending more money on advertising and such.
I just want
Just
some
gonna
peace and quiet.
play this. Just get it on the field. Gamma Sutra has an article managing the evolving state of Destiny. The game cannot grow infinitely forever. If you want to read this article, I believe Destiny did release some kind of new content. I believe Overwatch also released some new content. I don't really know or care about those games enough to go into details or know what it was. Gearbox Quebec is looking for a tools programmer. We still have yet to hear what Gearbox Quebec is really doing, but my guess is either they're doing the smart thing and making an IP and their own intellectual property outside of 2K, or they're doing the stupid thing and they're doing something Borderlands related. One would hope they're not doing something Duke Nukem or We Happy Few related, and I can't even venture a guess as far as what other options there'd be there. Gamma Sutra has an article. The Oculus co-founder Nate Mitchell has departed Facebook. So at this point, I think all the original founders of Facebook have probably left, unless there was more than two of them. Yeah, with Mitchell's department, all of the Oculus co-founders have now left the VR company they founded together, following in the footsteps of the former CEO Brandon Irabay's departure last October, and Palmer Luckey, Michael Antonov, and Andrew Scott Resin. Before that, Palmer Luckey, I believe, was the most controversial person in that group. Hey, we got 60 for playing priest cards, and that's pretty much all I'm gonna accomplish on this account. Let's just move over to the European account. I mean, we're on the European account. Let's move over to the Asian account. So Facebook's acquisition clearly did not fund any new development or any new momentum for Oculus Rift. Now they're all leaving. Wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them ended up forming a new VR company, or went on to work for some company like Valve, or went on to do something else. They probably all had stock options, so they're probably extremely rich. Alright, now we're in an even worse situation. 6 combo cards with the Rogue would work, so let's re-roll this. Alright, so just gonna play a little bit of Rogue gameplay and hope I can get one victory and play some combo cards. As I'm trying to wrap up here, I still have, I would say about 15 games to talk about. Make War on Steam looks like a real-time strategy game. Doesn't look particularly polished and doesn't look focused in. The reason you don't see entire global world maps in real-time strategy games is because it's just too much of a zoom out for the average person to keep in their mind. Whereas this image is almost too much of a zoom in. Your camera is too close for the number of troops on the screen. Like combo card, 1 mana combo card. Leave it at that. So yeah, Make War is early access for $14.99. It's English, Russian, and Chinese. So I'm not going to call it a troll game, I'm just going to call it a low effort, I would call it a low effort Russian game, if I were to guess. But yeah, definitely not making it to the fall list.
The light protects me.
Gamasutra has this article, and Gamasutra was particularly bad about talking about the US tariffs in a light that was specifically focused on video games when it wasn't. So they're doing that again. US tariffs on video game consoles imported from China delayed to December. President Trump blinked in his threats of tariffs in fears of affecting the sales during the Christmas season, which inherently a policy of economic isolationism is if you're going to embrace that, you're going to embrace that you are going to cause prices to go up and less purchasing to happen, which doesn't have to be always looked at as a bad thing. Like the idea that all of a government and society's focus should be on just making the economy always good is a lack of long-term thinking and a lack of looking at the other important aspects in particular. And China is potentially, depending on your opinion, doing some terrible things inside of its mainland, some terrible things inside of Hong Kong, and some terrible things near its western border. Most recently, I saw a story of them being accused of sterilizing Muslims, that they had already kept Muslims in basically concentration camps, and now they're sterilizing them allegedly. So, like, there's real good reasons to put economic pressure on China, that if Trump wasn't Trump, he could make that argument. It's not just an economic argument that needs to be made. And yeah, if you ruin a Christmas season and nobody buys anything for Christmas, that's going to hurt the economy in the United States. But it might be for the better, because the economy in the United States is built around a massive amount of consumerism, and if consumerism went away, that would be great. Is there anything really to say about this article? No, it's just a repeat of the Washington Post article. Of course, Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon.com, owns the Washington Post, so they have a vested interest. And Gamasutra has their political opinions, so they have a vested interest. In the long run, for video games and electronic construction in general, it's not a bad idea or thought to try and force construction of products back into the United States, where it would potentially create more low-paying jobs, or at the very least add some security and add some stability, and less just environmental effect. where things built in China tend to be built very dirty, environmentally speaking, where things built in the United States could be forced to follow more environmental protections, slightly more, not a lot more. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. Swedish studio Isbit Games shuts down after running out of funds. That's a fine way to go out of business, frankly. I did say this was going to be the year of companies going out of business, and this is just another example of this. I've never heard of Isbit Studios. It's the developer of Warp Shift and Zlatan Legends. Never heard of either one of those games. But it seems like they just ran out of money. It doesn't seem like they're going bankrupt. It doesn't seem like they're trying to pull any shenanigans. Hopefully they could make their last bits of payroll and they don't owe back pay. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Three. But yeah, definitely the way you want to go out of business, instead of having games that having game companies that pull all kinds of shenanigans and go out of business half finished with games half finished. It doesn't feel like that's the case in this scenario. No Telltale game experience, but certainly it still sucks for the employees. Next we have a game on Steam that's just a bunch of Chinese characters, Asian characters. This looks like it's an Infinite Runner that's been ported from mobile. Looks like it's pretty low quality. English not supported, 99 cents, Chinese only. Alright, yep. Nothing there that I could really say about that. Let's see this. And this. And then this. And that.
Your soul is mine.
Here we go.
Next we have a game on Steam called Atomorph, which is one of these games where you just rotate the environment. Physics game. This really isn't the style of game I'd ever really want to play. Like, as a concept and a gameplay mechanic, I think if you had this happen in one room, as a weird twist, as a break in the action in a regular 3D first-person shooter, that would be kind of cool. That game Control that's coming out, it would make a ton of sense if there was a room that you controlled how it shifted and it affected how you got out of that room. And you could do that maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the entire game, maybe even 6 times. But when you have the entirety of the game around that concept, that's just frustration. It's just frustrating. And when it's just flat 2D art, it's nothing special. This is discounted to $7.19, which is rather expensive. It has 11 achievements too, which doesn't really say anything, but I'll mention it anyways.
This guy's toast.
3.
Here we go.
Next we have a game on Steam called Aura Shift, which looks like it's kind of a fast-paced Asteroids clone. Seems like it's trying to do something different. It's doing an Ikaruga style of gameplay where you're having to shift your colors and then hit a certain color of enemies. I imagine you take damage if you fly into it. This is a game that looks like you'd be playing with the mouse like crazy, and you'd very quickly get carpal tunnel. It's got flashing for no reason. It's got a cheap, low-effort background fog. The animation looks like MS Paint stuff. There might have been a gameplay concept there. Yes, there was. It was introduced in Ikuraga, but this is not a game worth playing. It's $4.99, which is too expensive too. You might have sold me if it was 60 cents, but probably not even then. So when that plays, that's on the left side of the field. So when this goes back, it always goes back to the hands like that. Very rarely in Hearthstone have you ever had to really know what was on the left side of the field, or the left or right side of your opponent's hand. And I guess maybe that's not actually true. Maybe it adds back randomly.
Someday I'll be just like
Next we have a game on Steam called Sad, which looks like a low effort asset flip game. Like, thoroughly unimpressive at the very beginning. It's free, it's English only. Even at free, it's not worth your time. I can tell already.
This is art.
Here we go.
Next we have a game on Steam called PPDD, which seems like it's some kind of fighting game, but it's zoomed out too far and it seems like it's really slow. So, fighting game that you apply counterattack after avoiding the enemy's attack by simply operating only with cross keys. Since the enemy attack's sign is expressed visually, you'll not receive any unreasonable damage and can avoid all attacks if you're an expert. So this feels like this is a cheap Chinese effort at a fighting game that's more of a counter attack game. Discounted to $7.19. English and Japanese. I guess it's a cheap Japanese fighting game. Low effort thumbnail here. Camera angle is completely wrong. The interface is completely wrong. This looks like this might have been actually made in RPG Maker somehow. But yeah, that's definitely not making it to the fall list. Next we have a game on Steam here called Cubio. Now these are just polygons that we're looking at, but at the very least somebody has bothered to try and texture this. This is a game that screams, I knew I had no artistic skill, so I did my very best to make it look different, or at least stand out a little bit more than a blatant solid color. Doesn't look anywhere as bad. That being said, it's still not really good. Does look like it's kind of a Marble Madness clone. It's free and it's English only. I guess if you have 5 minutes you might want to try this, but I don't think there's a really anything here. It seems like it has something to do with the rhythm of the music too.
Here we go.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Gravity Control, which is just a gravity controlling platformer game that looks like it's not very well animated. It doesn't look that interesting. Inverse Flappy Bird, basically. Discounted to 59 cents, at least the price is reasonable.
Science.
English only, 48 achievements. It's clearly an achievement game. I'm starting to wonder if we're getting just like worse and worse games in a much larger amount. Maybe, maybe not. What could be happening though is just, I don't know what could be happening actually. Maybe we are just in a bad time of the year, or maybe we are just getting worse and worse games in general. Next, we have a game that has an Asian character and says stealth. It has this kind of anime-esque thumbnail, but the looks of the characters are more of a soft, Funko Pop art style more than anything. So you have some inconsistent art styles. The real game is just a stealth top-down game. Let's see. Is there really anything here that interests me? There's a little bit of polish here, I'll give it that, but not enough. It's discounted to $10.39, English and Chinese. Yeah, I'm not surprised. The lack of polish in the just generic boxes and the actual gameplay, and then trying to hide the actual gameplay behind an anime aesthetic and some visual novel style dialogue, but then having the actual game be 3D animated just speaks of an inconsistent art style. So I played 6 combo cards. Let's see, what was the other thing I was trying to do? Shaman or Warlock victories. Right, Murloc Shaman, casual, let's see. Next, we have a game called Ultimate Poker. I'm all in the stream, by the way, as soon as we're done with all the news. There's still a lot. Ultimate Poker. Thing about poker is that if it looks interesting, I'd put it on the fall list and see if is this going to be the actual poker game to play. This doesn't look interesting though, even at $2.99 and English only. There's really no reason to be English only for a poker game. It should be easy enough to translate at least to one other language. So that's not making it. Gamatsu has that article about that game. Monkey King Heroes are back. Launches October 17th in Asia, and with English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean language support. Do they have anything else to say about it? No. I have a lot of Gamatsu articles, so this will probably just take a while to get through it all. Actually, probably won't take it as long as normal. THQ Nordic acquires Goodbye Kansas Game Invest, which we talked about that before. Probably don't need to show the pages if it's just talking about the same thing. THQ acquires Gunfire Games. There were 63 staff members and the portfolio of all the existing intellectual property and the exciting new game pipeline. So, Gunfire Games. 63 people though in the video game industry is enough to make a difference. So, I would just look at that as nothing. THQ Nordic acquires Milestone SRL. Koch Media, it was, I guess, the parent company's name before. You know what? Changing Koch Media to Embracer is actually a better name. Like Koch Media was getting confused with the Koch brothers, who are like billionaires and own a different company, own quite a lot. So yeah, that's not a bad change name just for that reason. Although they should have probably thought of something better than just Embracer. Let's see. Time Splitters creator Steve Ellis joins THQ Nordic to plot the course of the franchise. almost certainly, as far as the Time Splitter series, and this will work out, I think, well for me, if no one else, almost certainly what's going to happen is the old games will get re-released, and due to the old games being re-released, I will be given an opportunity, whether I choose to embrace it or not, to play the old games on PC. I imagine they'll get released to PC, and I'll probably have an awkward experience at that point, though, because I will have never played the old games and they'll feel incredibly old, which is really why you can't just keep on acquiring the same old companies and re-releasing the same old games. They need new games, and they need new games that are actually good, and they're only getting about halfway down that path.
Job's done.
I think I might be able to win next turn. Maybe. If I could play this and this. Probably not, actually. Gametsu has the same article. Deep Silver Damburster Studio takes over Dead Island 2 development. I haven't really seen any video for Dead Island 2 in 2 or 3 years. I don't think they've released any video in 2 or 3 years, so it's clearly in development hell. Here. Here. Short by 3. Yeah, Gametsu has Volition is deep in development of a brand new Saints Row. We already talked about that. So, TechRaptor has basically an update to the story. G2A made this bluff, which, I mean, you really can't call it anything but a bluff. Here, I'll just swing. There's no reason not to take that victory and go.
Nothing.
So G2A said, if you give us the information that proves that keys were stolen and being sold on our account, we'll refund you. And they were gonna they're trying to make themselves, G2A as like the good guys, but they're trying to make it too complicated to actually have anybody get a refund. So I would say TechRaptor is kind of editorializing here when I say reparations demanded of G2A by Natural Selection 2 devs, Unknown Worlds. I believe the amount they're asking for is $300,000 for the damages that their game being sold on the gray platform, on the gray market platform. You'll see they're calling it a gray market platform, which I think is probably closer to a legal decision than you'd want to. Illegal chargebacks and a false solution. Is this a real lawsuit though? Yeah, this doesn't look like this is a real lawsuit. If this was a... No, this is really just a tweet. So some game developer who hates GTA is tweeting out, you know, owe us $300,000. Thanks. Which, like, so it feels like they're not really following a process or doing anything that would actually be anywhere close to them actually paying them back. So yeah, if they wanted their money, which they don't, they want to see G2A go away and be destroyed. They should have filed a lawsuit too, but it would be much more actual news if they were reporting on a lawsuits have been filed report versus a somebody on Twitter tweeted something, which is really all that story boils down to. Is somebody on Twitter tweeted something. Okay, good for them. That doesn't mean a lot. Next we have a game on Steam here called VIVO or Vivo. This seems like it's a low effort asset flip horror game. What's funny is it seems like they actually kind of are trying here. There's considerably more motions and animations happening, considerably more people around here, but even in their effort, their level of success is extremely low, and this looks like at best a game that would have maybe sold in Windows 95. 5% off for $15.19, which is way too expensive. English and Turkish. Again, strange we're starting to see more and more Turkish games. Haven't really heard anything that implies to me that Turkey has all of a sudden become a large embracer of video games. So, who knows? Next we have a troll game, Hentai Area 51, Anime Girl Area 51 idea. So they just took an anime girls that we've seen used hundreds and hundreds of times and put it in a standard asset flip first person shooter game. Yeah, not worth your time. Early access, 59 cents, English only. Says it has English full audio. It's in the giant bundle of garbage games. This and this and this and this, and in return oddly that game didn't have any sexual content or nudity, which you kind of would have expected some of that by the name hentai. Next we have a game article from Gamasutra. Paradox touts positive cash flow despite record marketing and developer spending. This is a little too inside baseball, but they're making money from things like City Skylines, Hearts of Iron, Imperator Rome, Stellaris, and Surviving Mars. I wouldn't be surprised if Stellaris is a big part of that. Could be that I didn't have a lot of news because I didn't even bother to look at my Twitter feed yesterday, but I actually did have a lot of news. We're going nearly 3 hours here. It's just all the games have been bad, which there should have been more good games. If they're on average during this point in the year, there would be good games. Now, right now in the United States, kids are going back to school like today, tomorrow, yesterday, tomorrow. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a great reason that there's not a lot of games getting announced and coming up. Skipping your first day of school is no way to ingratiate yourself with the education system, to say the least. So they tend not to do much sales. And I imagine parents wouldn't want to buy their kids games in the first week of school as they're settling in. Here we have a game that's a bunch of Chinese or Asian characters called The Lost Strings. I don't know if this is supposed to be a cooking game or an adventure game or what. It seems like it's kind of all over the place. It says it's a massive multiplayer according to the tags and an adventure game. And there's no video and no indication of how it plays at all. Early access, you can download it, it's coming soon, Chinese only. Yeah, I don't need to put this on the follow list. I do kind of like this art style, but it's just way all over the place as far as everything else. So I don't need to start another game, although it wouldn't hurt to try to get something else done. I'm gonna have to play more on the Americas account and more on the Asian account. But let's just finish the news. Gamer Searcher has an article, get a job. Guerrilla Games is looking for a senior producer. That's in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And 2 more things. We have a game on Steam called the Erstwhile Tower. It is worth mentioning, and not talking about this game, the fact that Senran Kagura came out and it was a game that had nudity and sexuality, and we haven't seen anything else, may not mean much, because maybe in my mind it really shouldn't reset the counter, because Senran Kagura and Xseed have a long established relationship with Valve and they know not to ban those games. So if we saw that there every couple months a new Senran Kagura game was released and it had nudity and sexual content, but then there was no other visual novels with that getting released, and there was no other games at all getting released, then there easily could still be a censorship ban going on with just one company getting an exception. This Erstwhile Tower looks like it's a time-based placement strategy game. It looks kind of visually polished. Doesn't look terrible. Let's see, free to play. Is this multiplayer? No, it's single player. It's English, French, and Spanish. Well, it's a free to play game with no microtransactions, so I guess play it. I'm gonna put this on the follow list and see if there's some reviews that explain what's going on as far as the monetization here, because this really feels like it's just coming out of nowhere, and there's no other game this developer's even made. This looks way too visually polished and way too much effort to be a free-to-play game. But whatever, we'll keep an eye on it. And then I guess possibly some of the biggest news, Spelunky 2 has been delayed past 2019. The density and detail of the game is demanding more time. Okay, people who are fans of Spelunky 1, I imagine, will just go back to playing Spelunky 1. Because I think you're probably still playing that if you were a fan of it, or could go back to playing it just fine if you're not. Let's see, we have a Humble Bundle here. The Jackbox Party 2019 exists. You would get all the original You Don't Know Jack games for $1. You get Jackbox Party Pack 1 and 2 for $12 or more. And if you pay more than the average of $12.37, you start to get You Don't Know Jack Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4, and Fibbage and Quiplash and Draw 4. Let's see. Oh, so you only get Volume 1 until you get up to this point. And then you get pay $15 more to get the Pack 3 and Pack 4. The point at which some of these games were released are really out of order. Like this, and this was a really long time ago, where this was like a year ago. So I guess if you have a slight interest in the You Don't Know Jack series and its many iterations, this might be a fine purchase. What you're not getting is the You Don't Know Jack game that came out for the Xbox 360, which they don't have available for PC. So that's not the best. That would be the one thing that would convince me to buy the bundle, since I own most of those games already anyways, and the ones I don't own are the expensive ones. I wouldn't want to get a bunch of duplicates, although it'd probably be, since they're party games, pretty easy to get rid of those. They have a Beat Goes On software bundle for people who want to try and make software. $25 for SoundForge Pro, maybe, and Acid Pro. Yeah, it's probably not a bad deal. as far as that Humble Bundle is concerned, if you're into that, into music. Let's see, there's a Bohemian Interactive game, My Little Pony book bundle in ebook format. What was the Bohemian Interactive games? Oh yeah, it was all the military games. So there's a bundle there that might be of interest. Meanwhile, I'll go back to my Twitter feed really quickly. Apparently there was a Call of Duty Black Ops update that came out. It's another Chinese game. THQ announces a collector's edition and an atomic edition of Biomutant. We'll talk about that on Friday. If you want to play Rebel Galaxy Outlaws with a PS4 controller, you have to follow their setup instructions because it's a game designed to be played with a heads-up toggle analog stick, you know, a HOTOS. I don't think it actually HOTOS actually stands for that. There's another game. Another game we can talk about on Friday. So some things came out while we were streaming for the past 3 hours. But yeah, I don't think there's any big news. There is something to be said about the blue background for the Twitter feed. It just doesn't make it feel like the tweets are that important anymore. You lose some impactfulness. It feels too much like a video game when you have a blue background on Twitter. I think I need to turn it back to the white background. And with that, there really was only 4 new tweets on my feed at all. So either I'm not getting tweets or just nothing is happening, and I wouldn't be surprised if nothing is happening. That's it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, you can support me via the link down below to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Something like a Senran Kagura game would be very much appreciated. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.